Hi and welcome to this podcast. Thank you for joining, Priya. Um, the topic I have chosen for today is a topic that I had never thought of till date. So it's a completely random topic. I am as surprised by the topic as you will be. It is about I want to talk about short attention spans.
Okay.
Uh, I find a lot of us are unable to concentrate on a particular subject for longer periods. But in terms of chatting about it, um, it just struck me 2 minutes back about a meeting I had today with a client. So there was this girl that I interact with. It's a regular client, and she is quite brilliant in her work and understands subtleties, all kinds of things that you would want in a professional. Are there? She's presentable, whatever you would need. But uh, in fact, one of the questions I ask her often is, "Why are you so restless?" Because see, so if she leaves the meeting room and she goes to her computer to get one document, somebody else catches her and gives her something else to do. She's already lost the track of the document. She remembers. It's not that she doesn't, but that she
Right.
used to get it. So after 5 minutes, one is getting fidgety. What happened to? She was just going to get the document. And you call her, she said, yeah, but somebody else caught me. I was doing that. Then that keeps happening, and sometimes she's doing three, four things at a time, and she's quite hassled herself.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and in looking at her, instead of smirking, I find, oh, this happens to me sometimes. Not as chronically as this, but it happens
Mm-hmm.
to me as well. And today, when I was thinking of this topic, I was also thinking of my mom, who's now 70 plus. And sometimes I think even she tends to do this. So, what could be a reason for our attention span not lasting for more than a few seconds or a minute or two max? What do you think is the reason?
Um, so see, when you say attention span, what I understand from it is that, how focused we are on a particular task and for how long, right? So, for example, let's take the example of your client who
Mhm.
goes for a document but gets interrupted by others. What I feel is it's not um, short attention span. Um, her it's her nature, that she wants to complete the task, but you could call her a perfectionist. That's what I'm getting at. So there are people who prioritize their own duties over others duties, but there could be people who uh, who want to do all of it and who want to get there and do their own thing as well. So that's how I looked at the example. That's my perspective from what you said. And as far as the reason for short attention span is concerned, I feel that see, so I'll just give you an introduction about what I do. So I'm an occupational therapist by profession, and I primarily work with children. So what I have observed in my field is that attention span is something that you develop over a period of time. So you have to nurture it, you have to water it like you would water a plant. So when you're very young, if you've always had short attention span, you're more likely to grow into it. You'll always have that. It's just that it gets in the background and covered by all the other beautiful qualities that you develop, but it's always there. The core always remains. And primarily the reason could be the exposure to what kind of environment a child grew in, and what kind of values were taught to the child, and how much emphasis was laid on attention itself, on doing a task correctly, and focusing itself by the people who were raising the child itself. So I feel that plays a major role in what a human becomes ultimately. Yeah.
Okay. In your personal experience, do you find sometimes that your attention wavers at times in your personal experience?
Yes. So usually I'm very attentive, and I'm very much into the details of what someone says. But quite a few times it has so happened that I would be frazzled by something already in my mind, or maybe I'm having a tough day at work, and something as small as writing down something in the grocery list slips my mind. So at that point, when I think that, okay, I need to put this down in my grocery list, at that point, I am attentive. But perhaps I didn't put enough priority on it, so it just slips my mind. So yes, that does happen. Yeah, quite a bit. And I think it also happens to me when I feel like, I'm getting late. Like there's something on I want to head somewhere, and, somebody stops me and they want to talk about something. And, in the back of my mind, it's like an alarm going on. Okay, you need to get there, you need to get there, you need to get there. So I tend to not pay much attention to what's going on. I don't know if it's a good habit, but yes, I tend to lose my attention span in such situations.
Okay. That's very interesting, and thank you for being honest about these two examples. One of the things that struck me with the second example uh, was we tend to prioritize things in a manner where we think there is always a shortage of time. And my understanding over a period of time is, no matter how much I hurry, if things are meant to happen in a certain manner, in the sense of the importance of what life is bringing to you at that moment. So, for example, uh, very often I am an advertising writer, so I am in a way the least important uh, of people that anybody gives any attention to, even in advertising. Although one wants ideas and one wants lines and clever lines and stuff like that, I find that people don't prioritize communication in their business as much as they should. So every aspect. So for example, if you are going to open a small designer boutique, you'll be worried about your products. You'll be worried about the lighting, the showroom, the little details, the bill books, everything. But you say, oh, we forgot to make the pamphlets that are going to go around in the. So let's call the guy, and then that guy is called at the last moment. And suppose he's a printer. I am giving a very rudimentary example, or an ad agency person, suppose whom you know. Oh, you can do it, yeah. Come on, it's so easy for you. It's not a big deal. It's just a regular boutique. But that guy, like people like us, are wanting to do something special because he has a chance to do something good. But he say, yeah, I want good stuff. But you got to do it now because you know what? Day after is my opening. So this has to go day after morning along with the newspapers. And this is a very rudimentary example. Mostly what happens is these are big things, campaigns and big construction projects and launches of showrooms and events, government events at times. So we are the people who are not given enough time. Over a period, initially when you are a writer and you have this whole imaginary view of how how time passes, you need your space and you want to crack the best idea and give. So all that is being snatched away from you. So you get hassled and frazzled about everything and you're not getting it. And if they reject it, then you are even more worked up. And at that point of time, you forget to pay attention to your work. Thankfully, I've spent around more than 20 years in the business. And I realized that you have to snatch your time back. You have to learn to say no. You have to learn to say this is a compromise that is going to happen if you are going to compromise on this job. So if you come at the last moment, this is the kind of work I'll give you. I still give my best work. That's my personal outlook. But I do sound them off that you cannot be expecting that the same quality of work will come to you in a lesser amount of time. Also, that helps me calm down internally. Once I have been honest about the possibilities with them and with myself, In fact, one of the learnings was to be honest to one's own self is equally difficult. You try and act very super heroic. You still want to do the best, and no, I'm going to do this anyhow, and it's not going to be possible. There are certain limitations to things. After my job, there is the artist job, and it requires a lot more physicality in terms of computers and designing and softwares. My job is mainly here. Once I've cracked the idea and I've cracked the line, it's done. But yes, one of the things that has helped me is discipline myself, to be honest, to be understanding the situation. Once I give it attention, I also realize it tends to increase. In terms of I've stopped. So if I have to do a job for you, Priya, and I have to deliver tomorrow morning, I will sit, and even if I have to do this podcast tonight, I'll finish the podcast. Like right now talking to you, I just remembered that it slipped my mind that I was supposed to send a mail, a job that I've already finished some 10-15 minutes back.
Right.
But I did not do that because I was doing 4-5 things which I wanted to finish before the podcast, and it is now, I will have to wait till the podcast is over. But I force myself to wait. So the moment that thought crosses my mind, I say, stop here. Right now, you can do only one thing. You are on camera, you got to complete it. So my full attention is to what you're saying and trying to make some sense, give you back as much as you are giving to the conversation. Only then it is a genuinely honest and authentically loaded conversation which will help someone. So my question to you from this sharing that I had was, do you think one can train one's mind to focus more, and what does this training entail?
Okay. First of all, I would like to appreciate the the immense amount of self-control and the dedication, both in different contexts, that you have with your work. I really like the fact that you know that you have to email someone, but it's a completed work, but you are still sitting down for this conversation. It shows how much you value it. So I really appreciate you for that. So what I feel is, getting back to your question, yes, one can train their mind into focusing more, and see, it depends from one individual to another individual. Uh, what entails the training depends from one individual to another individual. I'll tell you why. Because for me, if getting things done is a priority, for someone else, perhaps spending time with someone would be a priority. Likewise, if you take another person, something else, say none of these things, but simply I can't think anything off the top of my head, but something else would be their priority.
Sitting and sipping a
So
coffee, for example.
yes, as basic as that. So what my point is that you have to curtail your mind. It is like it's tailor made. The program for every person's mind is tailor made. That's what I'm getting at. So I have to show resilience in not being a perfectionist, and I have to try and stop myself from being a perfectionist when I need to focus more. Somebody else would probably need to curtail their uh, addiction or affection for coffee if they want to focus more. So it's different. It's a different part of the body. It's a different function that they want to do, that they need to stop. So once the person, like, what I'll say is that I introspect a lot, maybe not as much as somebody else who's really good at it, but I do. And I always go back to what I have done in the past and analyze that. So what I feel is that if I know what my weakness is, if I have that insight, I would be able to control that, and then focus my work on one particular thing at a time. So that's what I feel. As far as another person is concerned, I think it's basically knowing what your weakness is and then working on that, eliminating that weakness, That would help you focus.
Okay, so very nice thought what you just shared.
Thank you.
Does it mean that one needs to be genuinely honest with understanding how our actions impact ourselves and others, to introspect on this element to find out what is the weakness? Because you actually put it very simply, it's not that simple. So
Right.
I have a friend who used to smoke before the lockdown, and he used to smoke one cigarette in a day, which he said is not a great deal. uh, I am I am doing this just because it gives me an outlet of sorts, and I don't want to become a saint and all this stuff. And this is fine. It's just one cigarette a day. And I used to tell him, even why even one cigarette for that matter. But it never worked, and I am not very pushy. I was like, yeah, okay. But
Right.
in the lockdown, something clicked for him, and he just quit. He says that was enough for me, and I just decided.
Right.
And unfortunately I have not had a detailed chat with him what led to it, because he was very particular about this one cigarette a day or whatever, and he had to hide it from his kids and smoke, or some such thing he used to do.
Right.
So my question to you is, if a my understanding is that a person has to be open to the possibility of being wrong. If
Yes.
that doesn't happen, a lot of times what happens is that we are so closeted in the thought box that I am right. But then it becomes very difficult to sit and do this kind of self-analysis that you mentioned. So if we were to start there, what, how does one start analyzing? Do you think life itself teaches one to do this, or in your manner, because you also practice therapy, or your personal life? What is it that will help instigate this, rather provoke this journey of self-analysis?
Right. Um, that's actually a very interesting question because it reminds me of something that you said earlier in our conversation, and that is simply, you know, knowing what exactly. So you said that what leads to self-analysis, right? So for a person to be able to analyze themselves, first thing they need to be attentive to their needs,
Uh,
attentive to their own body, right? So it brings it all back to the attention span, on how much attention span you're giving on yourself. When you're getting thirsty, how often do you get thirsty? How often do you want to go to pee? How often do you drink coffee in a day? So all these little things are, like experiences in our mind. And when when, like, for example, if somebody goes to a coffee shop and knows that, okay, I want my coffee extra strong, no sugar, and I want it at drinking temperature, I don't want it hot. It is knowing, it's like an inner calling, because what informs that is your experience. You might have had a very light coffee in the past, or you might have had a very sweet coffee in the past, and you know that, okay, it simply doesn't suit your palate. So you want it tailor made for yourself. So you're being attentive to your own needs. And that is what I think leads to this self analysis. And you're already doing it. Every person is already doing it day in and day out through every task. What leads to a change, like when you're intending to change yourself, is channeling all that energy that you're paying, all that attention that you're paying on these small things into that one thing.
uh,
So yeah, so that's what I feel. And I'll give you my own experience with my like something that I have been through. And that is, I think growing up, I was not very confident of how I weighed, or how much I what was my body weight or how I looked. So in the back of my head, there used to be, so when I was a child, I was very skinny. When I was in my teenage, I started putting on a lot of weight. So
Okay.
it's like, people around you, they're always unhappy and they set these standards for you.
Yeah.
So for me, in the back of my head, every time I ate something or every time I went somewhere, this constant alarm, not like an alarm, it's like a background noise that kept on going, that, okay, you know what, you're putting on weight, you know what, your tummy is, bulging out,
Yeah.
these things. And it's very subtle, but it's always there. It's like a background noise.
Yeah.
As simple as the fans sound when you go to sleep. So
Yeah.
it's there always, but it doesn't bother you that much. What happens eventually is that, um, there comes, I don't think it's like a singular point in your life when you realize that you need to control yourself or you need to pay attention to this, but a series of experiences which leads you into a point in life where you realize that, okay, I need to stop. So the attention would always be there, the analysis is always there, it's just that it's subdued. The emphasis on is on something else, and the process is delayed because, again, self control is an issue. So the process is delayed, and there is this point when you decide that, okay, I am going to do this to lose weight. And when the intention comes from within, when you have that inner drive, when you have that goal to do it yourself, not when somebody else asks you to do it, the output is, you know outstanding. That's what I feel.
Okay. Couple of questions, because you there was a longish answer and I got nice random thoughts running in all directions. But I'll stick to one. When you said that the analysis is always on, but we've got to bring it to a point where it is a lot more focused. Um, is it, say for example, we continue your example. So if you knew that weight was an issue, I have other things to say about taking other people's views as your own, but that is a separate conversation perhaps by itself. But so you know that you're doing this, and still you are indulging yourself in that extra slice of cheese pizza or whatever it is that you fancy at that moment. Are we escaping the truth? Are we escapists in that moment? I'm just asking you. I'm not judging also. Is this one way? Because it kind of saves our sanity. See, everybody around you is saying that you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. There is no dearth of people putting you down. Your own background voice, which has been replaced by other voices sometimes, because sometimes you may not have a problem with your weight at all. Like I have a friend who is quite healthy, and every time we joke, so I think he builds up on the joke very well. And me, the community that I come from, Sardar jokes have been a part of my life forever. And I've always enjoyed a good joke, which is not nasty. Like I never liked the 12 o'clock thing where people wanted to be nasty to me. So that wasn't enjoyable. But if it is a good joke that even I can laugh at, so that is a healthy sense of uh, being able to look at oneself. So my question to you is, you know it that is bad for you. You know everybody is saying this. Maybe it's a sign of protest. It's a sign of escaping from the intense pressure that everybody is putting on you, or you are putting on yourself. Is that something that we do consciously or subconsciously?
I partly agree with you on this because, again, I don't know why I keep going back to a child's example, but when you push something too much on a child's mind, they tend to rebel it. So that's human instinct. When something is forced upon a human, you tend to rebel it more often than accepting it. Okay. So that's how all these things happened in the world when like people were like trying to rule over India, and then suddenly everything was different for the people over there, and then everybody wanted to rebel. So when something's forced upon you, you tend to rebel. So my point is, when people around you start telling you to lose weight, more likely you feel like antagonizing them, you feel like going against what they want. So sometimes, like, depending on how an individual's mind functions, for example, for me, I am more of a person who will be like, okay, I should listen to them. So I am more accepting. But there are people who have a very strong need to not listen to another person and do what they feel is right? So that may happen. It may happen. It is totally subjective again. And another thing is that we do indulge ourselves. I won't deny that. We consciously indulge ourselves, but not because we want to, or because we are being dishonest. Because like I said, we always know that, okay, this is going to cause this. So that itself shows being honest, right? So if I eat an extra piece of cheese pizza, I'm going to put on these many kilos or whatever. I know that that's going to happen. I do it anyway because there are two things. One is that, humans are very curious. They are curious beings. If they are, if something is in front of them, and you put them in a closed room and ask them to fold their hands and sit and not touch, like the recent chocolate challenge on Instagram that all the parents were uploading with their kids, you have the tendency to touch it. So when you know that you should not be doing it, you still do it anyway to see maximum what will happen. And this is a dialogue that one of my ex colleagues where I used to work before said always: maximum what will happen if you do it. So yeah, you are in a way playing with fire, in a way, and you do it anyway. So I think that's how it works.
And what is the second point? You said this is one of the points. And the second reason one would eat
Yeah.
it.
So the second point is that, you indulge because you want to indulge. Not because, somebody told you not to, but you want to do it because that's your priority. You like doing it. You enjoy doing it. Do you get my point?
Yes. Okay. I want to take a detour from here into a different slant to the conversation. See, we've been talking about attention spans. Somehow, the idea is more mental than physical. As the conversation went, one realizes it is more to do with the mind and how priorities, discipline, honesty to look at oneself or self-analyze more consciously can help. But one part which is not part of this conversation necessarily, but I like it as a thought, so I would want to pursue it to see where it goes. There is so many people telling us, so much of knowledge being available. We are called the Google generation, and everything is easy for us. Uh, so I find a lot of us. I find myself both at an advantage and a disadvantage. I'll give you a real-time example to set the context a little better. When we used to work in the pre-internet age, if I were to call it, we used to use the computers, but it was mainly to send uh, official emails. There was one software called Lotus that we used to use, and there was no internet per se. So our internet, because I was in advertising, so say for example, just to continue the boutique example. So if you come to me, so what I'll do is I'll search for magazines, look at similar things or dissimilar things. In my case, I always went out of the box to look at, okay, what else can I contextualize and put it in your communication, which makes it new. So for example, if I'm working on an engineering brochure, I would sit and read about watches or traveling, just to see how the two can interject at some point of time so that I can come up with a third thing or something like that. But it always took effort. It always took courage. It always took a lot of knowledge to come to the point where I started doing your work, because I had to come to you and be better than you. You knew your business better than me, but I had to show that I understood your business, but I had come up with an idea that surprised you. So that took a lot of work. Now that same amount of work, I think within 10 years of my joining, we had Google happening, and there were juniors coming and working under me. And when I gave them work, they were not as good at it because they found it very easy. So if I were to praise something, they said, yeah, I found it on the second page. So their hard work was going from page number 1 to page number 2 of the search. and it was there, and they went directly to images, so they've cracked the image and the line both, and I'm like, okay, you just shortchange yourself. Do you know that? But they had no clue that they were shortchanging themselves, and because you. So to cut a long story short, basically you go through a lot of effort, and then the juice comes out in any amount of work, in any field of work. So, for example, if you're a therapist, you will realize over and over you can never sit with a kid or whatever it is that you do, say a bunch of kids or some other thing that you do. You cannot take it for granted that I know. Because every
Right.
now and then, one kid or somebody will do something that you were unprepared. And if you're not
Correct.
attentive, sometimes you just miss the point. And at that
Correct.
point, you're always challenged. So now, unless you've been attentive, unless you focused on your field before this, unless you understood the entire expanse of what the field is about, studied more or gone into depth, my question is, do you think it is the ease of information flow that is also one of the reasons that we are unable to focus on for a long time? Because everything is very split second.
Yes. I understand your question, and I surprisingly, this is what I say day in and day out, because when I deal with my clients, I feel that, more often than not, they have it easy. I feel like some, uh, not the clients, not the kids, but the generation, they have it easy because everything is at one click. But somehow I feel like giving you the other side of the story as well, in the sense that
Please,
it might be easy, and it might look easy, but what's happening here is that, when I say that, every person has a different experience growing up. So if we compare one generation to another generation, okay, and if we do a cross comparison, the experiences that they grew in are completely different. So the comparison between those two generations, and the things that were available in, say, your generation, or to somebody else's generation who are much younger to you, wouldn't be a fair comparison, I feel. um
yeah, okay. This is not
yeah.
more from a comparison point of view. It is, okay, let me rephrase the question then.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's
Do you think our way of communicating with each other, thanks to messaging, Instagram, uh, everything is at a click in the sense of availability? There is no, so I want it and I get it in the next second.
right.
From
Right.
food to fashion to everything is now going online, and with the lockdown. So if that was so, why would be so many people be depressed in lockdown? Because everything in a way was far more easily available online within a month or so. Initially it
Right.
wasn't, but later it wasn't such a big deal. So
Right.
I mean, in the sense of instant gratification that we get,
Yes. Yes.
is it a deterrent to paying attention? Because I know if not this next one, if not this next one, uh, does that
Yes.
make it
Brilliant.
okay? Now the question is it much more difficult to make a choice because you're spoiled for choice now?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's intelligent, actually, because it's true, when you have so much choice and when everything is one click away, it has a direct impact on your impulse control. So impulse control is, like you use the term instant gratification. So impulse control is when you don't have that one thing that prevents you from getting instant gratification. So it's that. So what happens is, when you have so much availability and everything is so easy to get, you lose your impulse control, you lose your um, patience, you lose your tolerance. And attention span, being another cognitive function, another function of your brain, I feel definitely there is a direct relation, because um, I wouldn't say that impulse control belongs to the same part in the brain. The function is not governed by the same area in the brain. I hope I'm not wrong, but I feel that there would be some direct relation in that. Yes. So the answer is yes, definitely, because everything is easily available. It could have a direct impact in the attention span somehow. Yes.
So, so interestingly, would the reverse be true? So, if we denied ourselves the gratification for a while, uh, would it be a good exercise for say even our viewers? I want to share a small example here. I have a teenage daughter. She's around 13 now. And one of the little things that I've taught her, and I try and do it myself in front of her also, and otherwise also try and incorporate in my daily life, is fairly simple. What you like, you don't do, and what you don't like, just do. It's simple. So what happens is the days when you are trying to have something and the dish prepared is not of your liking, you still quickly eat it like you are eating a normal dish. I believe sometimes it helps train the mind a lot more better for setbacks which inevitably happen.
Right.
So my question to you is, um, would a sense of delaying the gratification, even if it is artificial, even if it is enforced, even if it is for any reason that we choose initially, as long as the intent is our own, because I like what you said. As long as somebody else is saying it, we are always trying to rebel or we are not happy with it 100%. But if it is our own intent, uh, then do you think working on one's own mind to delay this gratification might be a good idea, physically possible idea for people?
Um, Definitely, it's physically possible. Um, Very likely physically possible because there's a lot of people who do that. Uh, Giving you the simplest example of people who are on a diet, who promise themselves a cheat day at the end of the week or once in a month. So it's very likely to do it. And definitely, what happens is you get more satisfaction and more happiness when you receive something after a wait. Do you get my point? So yes, I think it should be, it is a very good exercise for the brain, for the mind, in order to it's like an exercise for your mind. You train your mind into doing that, and the result is fruitful. But there's also certain drawbacks which are not so much, but there are drawbacks to it. I wouldn't say there aren't, in the sense that for more severe, like if you take somebody who's got a very severe urge for something and you deny them that, or they deny themselves that, like I said, it's like a constant alarm going off, ticking off in your mind. And I'm afraid, or what I feel is that the consequence of that could be when the person finally receives what they want, there could be abuse of the opportunity. It would be that one point where you lose all self control and you just indulge. So I feel that it could happen. So again, it's not a solid predictor for every single person and for what they want to prevent themselves from doing.
Okay. This is good because you reminded me of a question that I forgot to ask you and it had ran in my mind earlier. You used the word control in some context. I have a problem with the word control because any kind of suppression, which is what you just actually kind of contextualized this idea of.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to blow this idea a little more wider. In my case, in my daughter's case, whatever we try and do, we allow ourselves to fail as well. So there are times when she would come and say that, look, you said you were not going to do this, but you ended up doing this. So I have tried to then use honesty and truth as a way to break. uh, See, we tend to justify when we err most of the time. If we land up doing a mistake, we would rather justify. And I wouldn't say that always I am good. Some days I have to literally tell her, look, I am the dad, I decide. So that happens, but it's fairly rare. I have tried to be fair to as much as is possible, obviously, with all the flaws. But at times I have been telling her, okay, yes, I did err, and this is the kind of punishment, or this is the kind of reason why I did it. Also, I also use challenge as a good exercise to work out the solution. So, for
Right.
example, if she is erred or something, she's allowed to choose her punishment. So, for
Right.
example, to think about it and let it be fair. So we kind of most of the times I don't even have to negotiate because she tries to be fair and I have to actually stop it. It's okay because the point has been made. Punishment is not the reason for anything. It's just that you understood the point. So at times we have a lot of difficult conversations as well. Why I want to bring this up is how it connects to attention is when you own the topic, when you intend to really work on yourself. I think one other beautiful thing that you picked up in the conversation at some point was paying attention to your body. How much do I realize? Am I going to the loo enough? Am I drinking water enough? Um, one good example is in the middle of my sleep. Sometimes you want to get up and visit the loo, and you just don't
Yes.
want to get up because you're so tired or it's been a long day.
Right.
Long back, I think from my college days, I was very clear that because you don't like it, you got to do it. Because unless you do it, then your body is suffering in a way.
Right.
At some other point, you are going to pay for it. Might as well just get up and finish it off. So, this finishing it off in a manner where you are not the most important part of life. What has to be done is most important.
Right.
So, this breakaway thing also helps where you are a little more um, not self-centric.
Right.
Is doing the right thing, what has to be done. So that automatically helps you be a little more aware, be a little more attentive to your own self. And I wanted to speak a little about this. How does being attentive to one's own self help us be attentive in life? How does that correlate according to you?
Okay, that's an interesting question. See, all right. So I'll give you one example that I face at work. So my workplace from my home is quite a bit of a commute. Okay. So there are days when I have an easy commute. I get a seat in the bus. I don't have to, the weather is pleasant and I reach my workplace. And, I feel, like, okay, I have seen that, okay, it's not today. It's not sunny today. Or, see, I got a seat on the bus. So it's like, internal checkpoints going on in my head. So I am attentive, right? I'm paying attention to those things. So I reach my workplace and I'm in full spirit. Like I unleash myself there and, I have a great day at work. Or even if I'm not having, I'll give you the contrary example also. Even if I'm having a very difficult client, unexpected scenarios, like you said earlier, I'd still have the mindset to, work my way through it. Whereas on the days when I have to face a difficult commute, have forgotten something at home, or don't have my bottle of water with me, or couldn't get down to buy a bottle, or was running late, it would definitely impact my performance at work, because in my mind I know that I have not been able to have a smooth way to the work. So my attention is on all the hurdles that I faced to reach work. Do you get my point? So that impacts my performance, that impacts my attention span in the work itself, the end product. So what I'm trying to say here is that having attending to your body is very crucial in knowing uh, where you stand emotion wise. Because if you aren't able to regulate the emotions that's going on in your body, obviously for the emotional regulation you need to know what's going on in your body, which is your attention. That's what it does. If you aren't able to do that, you wouldn't be able to focus on the next thing forward. You wouldn't be able to move forward. So yes, that's how it relates according to me.
Okay, so I have a trick question now. Your answer led to a question which is a little deeper. So now, if you were to find a way of, like, I'll be a little more clear here. A lot of people these days are trying to learn kinds of yoga and meditation to be more focused. Okay, but because some of it is following a fad, they do not uh, really gain the full benefits of what they should be getting, because everybody else is doing it. Let me also join the yoga class, or let me do pranayam, or whatever it is that they do. Uh, I want to create a hypothesis here. So, say for example, you're really having a bad day in your commute. Uh, Now you've reached your office, and the case that you're handling on that day is a particularly sensitive case, and you know that you have to perform your best, because that person who's at the receiving end of your service is going through a much worse time than your day at work so far, commute or whatever, or lack of
Right.
water bottle or whatever. So I am presuming that you, like a normal human being, you will keep your own dissatisfaction aside, and you will try and give it everything that you have, because there is also one part of you who knows that as a professional, as a human being, you want to give your best for this person or child or whosoever is you're facing. So that thing has really happened. What you claimed
Yes.
earlier affects you, but how does it not affect you at this point of time? What has changed? So do you think this sense of normalizing your difficulty, or if you want to use a better, if I were to use a better word, is equanimity, is trying to be calm about it. Okay, this is a reality and I accept it. It has been a bad day so far. And then combining it with the compassion that you have as a fellow human being, or as a
Right.
therapist. Do you think these are qualities that should be nurtured at times which are not necessarily like these? My question
Yes.
is that, because on that moment it's okay, you can judge that this person needs my compassion more, or but sometimes you may
Right.
not know. I may be going through a far more harrowing time, and I am coming with my kid at that point of time to you. You may not be aware of what's going in our mind. Obviously that's not your job either, but the part that, because we are talking attention, what to do with this attention is equally important. Are we bringing it up to a point where it helps us lead a better life, not just be attentive about movies and coffee and what kind of things we want and what we don't want? This is a uh, fairly top layer manifestation of attention. Do you think it can be used to develop better qualities of the mind, uh, work a little more on introspection, because a focused mind would be able to work better?
Right.
Would you want to talk a bit? Have you ever tried something like that? And how has it helped or not helped? Or do you know anybody?
Yeah. So I'll again go back to the same example, because what you said is absolutely correct. We need to nurture those values. We need to have compassion. We need sometimes, like I'm going back to your own terms. Sometimes we need to not be self-centric. That's what you said. And pull yourself out of yourself and look around what's happening, look at other people, feel their emotions as well, feel their difficulties as well. But yeah, that is true, and that's exactly what one should aim for, because even if I had to work, and despite the fact that I've had a bad day, despite the fact that I know that possibly I may not perform well at work, I should stop and I should address what I'm feeling and try to get a quick or a short term solution for it, so that I'm able to focus better at work.
Wonderful.
So, yes, definitely. That's what I've experienced quite a few times at work. Bad commute or whatever reason, I reach work, and in fact, I used to not do it before, and I should thank my boss for this. Couple of times she noticed how I used to just straight walk in and just start through my day, charging through my day. So she stopped me and she's like, okay, take a breather, think, relax yourself, drink a glass of water, head to what you're doing. And when I started doing that, when I inculcated that, because I do take advices, I do take criticism, constructive criticism. When I started applying that, I saw a positive shift in my working attitude, and it definitely helps to nurture those qualities. So yes, 100% I agree with you on that.
Okay, so you put a nice context there. So a pause would help. Uh, do you
Right.
think then the pause is also attached to the attention itself? If we just pause enough to see ourselves, manage our whatever the concern is. So, for example, if we were to go back to that friend of that colleague that I was talking about, uh, so when she goes to pick up that document and has to come back, she just needs to pause and tell the other person to wait for a while. I'll come back to you. I have this
Right.
look. I have to go attend the meeting and finish it off. So that
Yes.
pause gives you that just that extra second uh, to take advantage of what you're doing in a better manner, in a more focused manner. Do you think this
Yeah,
pause should be given
absolutely.
to attention because of the
Yes,
example you gave?
because yeah, sorry. Absolutely, because when you take that pause, so we very commonly hear the statement that you should not react, you should respond. So what essentially happens is, when you take that pause, you don't react. You don't blurt out what you blurt out of your impulse. You think for a moment, you think, okay, I have to do this. And this work seems like something I can do later. So I can request them to wait for me. So yes, absolutely. It definitely helps.
Okay. Um, so far, I just want to bring into context the certain values that have come up. We started with the example of it's not easy to pay attention because we are different kinds of people and our focus itself is different. Like you said, some people
Yeah,
like to do too many things at once.
right.
What is very uh, wrongly put as multitasking and was known as jack of all trades, master of none earlier. So,
Right.
societal changes affect all of us. So, it's seen differently. But you're saying there are different kinds of people. But we kind of agreed on that a focused mind can give better results at whatever we decide. And it might be as simple as knowing what kind of coffee you want, to doing your work better, and then connected it to how when we are content and calm ourselves, we pass on the calmness to others as well. So you decided to share the example of even a bad commute on a day might not necessarily result in a bad day because you just took that breather and then you calm down, and that calmness or uh, that ability that you have decided to come to the fore and as a therapist, as a person. Um, so again, in that sense of allowing yourself space to uh, accept that things may not be exactly what you want, but you got to accept. And also a sense of healthy sense of let go, perhaps. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's happened and it's gone. So I didn't have water then, or I missed the bus, or I didn't get a seat. So it's okay. Now one little question I want to ask you at this point, because of this example of the bus. I because of my dad's upbringing specifically, he used to offer seats every time we traveled. So I got into that habit, and there have been times like in a 20-minute ride, I have offered 5 different people my seat again and again and again, and still got a seat to reach home. So it's quite a funny example at times. Uh, I have found that this sense of goodness then tends to also give me a lot of strength. And by strength, I actually mean strength. I feel empowered during that moment, not as tired, um, not as wavered in my thinking. It's more focused, it's more happier, it's more content. Things are still as bad. I am in the crowded bus or train, whatever the case may be, or things may be difficult, but they don't perturb me too much. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. It happens sometimes. So, do you think developing this kind of attitude of focus and a sense of calmness also, because focus by itself, even snipers are quite focused, but they kill people. So, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily a good trait to have unless your morality is in place. But if one develops a sense of calmness, has a certain moral choice about being honest with one's um, thought processes, do you think it gives us power? It gives us strength?
Yes.
Have you experienced something like that?
Yes. Absolutely. I have experienced a lot of situations. It first of all, it's a beautiful thing that you do offer your seat, despite the fact that you would have to go through the discomfort. And what I feel essentially that you get out of it is this sense of peace, like you said, this sense of it's like an accomplishment to do something better, to do something positive.
Yeah,
So, so that it impacts another person positively. Um, I don't know how this works, but it's always like people do say that people, or when you read certain things, it does mention that negative thoughts can overpower your mind. It can just capture your mind, and positivity just dies down and stuff like that. But for me, I've always been like an infectiously optimistic person. So I feel that when you do something positive, when you do something nice, it has the power to impact um, your whole state of mind, your whole, your walk changes the minute you do something nice. The way you walk, the way you talk, the way you behave, everything changes. So I feel it's quite a powerful but underrated uh, pointer that you mentioned there. It's a very, very good quality to be able to make a sacrifice and get happiness out of it. But uh, what I like to point out here is that despite the fact that the body's um, in discomfort when you offer someone else seat, it doesn't matter. It's physical. The mind rules all. So the positivity is more powerful there. And yes, I have experienced that so many times. In my life, at work, in my college, when um so just a few days back, I was talking to my mom about this classmate I had, who um who was very shy and very very reserved, and due to whatever reason, the person was made fun of by people in my class. And when I was growing up, I used to be I would say, I don't want to boast, but I used to be good at a fair amount of things, and I used to be that person who would score well, who would be good in subjects. But despite all that, when I saw another person, this person who suffered this, I always had compassion. So not sympathy, I had compassion, because I used to feel that he's just like me. And for me, it mattered more to nurture those friendships rather than nurturing what accolades I was getting. So something that other people deem as happiness couldn't necessarily be the same for me. And I felt that, if I be with that person through their pain, even if it's hurting me, that, I'm feeling sorry that he's in pain, it still gives me happiness. It still gives me positivity. The person feels positive. So yes,
There is
that's what I have experienced.
There's one little point I want to bring up because I have often wanted to, but I have never been able to dissect it in my mind well enough. Uh, I am actually quite a pessimist by nature, and in the sense of I like it. I like that life cannot be trusted and things are always going to go wrong, and that's why one has to be at one's best, what one can do at all times in every manner. You give it your all. You do not take anything for granted. uh, Hope doesn't exist only in my dictionary. Hope and all are very loose words which are bandied about that this is going to happen, that is. You make things happen as much as you can make them. Then if it doesn't happen, then you try again and you keep doing it. But it's not going to happen. But that's none of your concern. So I think sometimes that ignorance of the fact that it may happen, you keep fighting. You keep doing what you want because that is being true to your own authentic feeling of doing something. It is no longer result based that things will turn out for the better or not, or it doesn't matter at all. But you got to keep working. There is doing, and there is the rest of it is thought. It doesn't matter what your thoughts are. Are you doing or aren't you? So why the delineation that happened very nicely in my head was when you used the word optimistic, and I was thinking, but I am now just going to break her heart and I'm going to say pessimistic about this aspect. But it now struck me, it is optimism in your own self that you are going to try. That intent is always optimistic. The the ability to take your responsibility and your duty honestly, authentically, uh, fanatically, if need be, is the place where that optimism arises. The rest of it, that life is going to change and things are not going to fall in place, and you may not win the race, you may not get the job, your results might not be what you wanted. All that is, any which ways, all those things are, my understanding is all those things are out of our control. What is
Right.
in your control? You can study as much you want. You will pass or fail is in the examiner's hand.
Right.
Similarly, you can try as much as you can, but the job may come to you or may not come to you. You may say, oh, I know so and so person and his niece is working as his nephew is working there, but it doesn't always fall in place. Somebody else may know somebody who has more contacts than you have. So there's always the chance of something going wrong. And sometimes even when you get what you want, it's not what you thought it is. So
Right.
so sometimes, because the cheese pizza example came up, I had a friend and we used to spend a entire week at a coffee shop in my neighborhood. And he's the only guy that I had that particular pizza with. And I used to tell him, man, I not before you, not after you. We've had that bad pizza day after day for 7 days because we were so engrossed in your work that we seemed to love what we were eating.
Right.
The attention was never on the pizza. It was always on work. So in a very funny way, it connects back to attention. Sometimes when not paying attention is beneficial to bad experience. But yeah, the
Right.
focus. Um, I want to definitely end on the note of where focus is there. It's a good thing to develop. One can work towards it. That is the first step to being successful in anything that we undertake. Only then can we. And it's. I think I'd read a line which said something on the lines of love is giving attention, something like that. And I
Yeah.
think it's true of everything that we do at any point of time. Sometimes it is just as simple as when you're taking a bath or you're just eating a meal, and it may be the simplest meal, but you're eating it with a lot of attention.
Right.
Of late, I think during the lockdown, all of us had such experiences where you had to make do with what was available during those days. And suddenly you said it's not that bad. I think it crossed my mind quite a couple of times. Okay, why do I create a ruckus about this? This works quite fine. Or if you had to do something, some work, and I used to put up jokes on Facebook about my sweeping and mopping experiments, and there were a lot of people who kind of it resonated with a lot of my friends, and they took it in the right spirit. They used to make jokes. I used to make jokes that today I have been given a promotion. Today I was allowed to mop the house, stuff like that.
Right.
I'm saying paying attention brings a lot of uh, joy in that moment itself. And maybe that also leads to the other beneficial states like compassion. You can only be compassionate when you're first compassionate with yourself. When you are saying, okay,
Right.
you had a bad day commuting, but it's okay. Okay, don't worry, Priya. Some tomorrow will be okay perhaps. But let's concentrate and help this guy out. He looks in a bad state, and uh, I
Right.
think this has been a wonderful random talk. I've also been unable to take a linear look at things, but small good values have come up, uh, real everyday values rather than those bookish ideals that one can't live up to. So
Right.
I want to thank you for such a lovely chat, for your time,
Thank you.
and I'll see you soon. Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.